Hello and welcome to this special presentation on Times Now. The budget this year is going to be extremely important. It doesn't matter where you are in the country or where you are at life. This budget perhaps might just define the next couple of years of your life. Now, we are in Bennett University in the National Capital Region, and with me right now is Professor NilanjanBanik, who is a professor of economics, and the young, bright students of Bennett University. Give yourselves a huge round of applause. Thank you for participating here. Now, the purpose of this program is to find out what young India wants from this budget. How does young India perceive the budget 2020, what they want in it, what they feel should be in it, and what they seem to think about the challenges facing Nirmala Sitharaman, our finance minister. Before I go to the students, however, I would like to start the show with Professor Banik, if I could. Professor Banik, this particular budget has assumed significance in ways more than one. Particularly because our economy is in a downslide. It's not really good news on the economic front. The government's trying really hard, but they have an uphill, onerous task. To you, what is an ideal budget? I wouldn't say good or bad, because depending on who you speak to, it could be different yardsticks. But what is an ideal budget going into 2020s?
See, in a way, budget is no different than how we manage our family. I'll just give you an instance. Like, we have our own income, and we prioritize our spending based on the requirement. The similar thing is we are going to see about the budget. The government has fixed pot of money and something they actually earn from taxes, and they have to prioritize their spending on various activities, for instance, health, education, or for rural sector. Now, I'll tell you why this budget is important for some reason, and these are the known facts. For the first time in last 4 decades, we have had scenario where the consumption expenditure is falling. Now, what does that mean? If you look into our society, one of the perception is inequality is growing. Now, we have close to 500 million farmers in India. Now, out of these 500 million farmers, almost 85% of the farmers belongs to the small and medium categories with less than 2 hectares of land holdings. Now, one of the reason, what has been talked about in the press, is maybe because of demonetization, this farming sector and the small and medium scale industry got hurt. And because of that, what we are seeing has happened over the last 4 decades, which is a fall in consumption expenditure. So therefore, the first thing I should expect from the finance minister is there any way we can actually boost up this consumption expenditure? Because without that, again, you might have heard that the latest growth figure for our GDP is around 5%. You know, that is
4.5.
4.5 is the least in the last 11 years. You know. And consumption expenditure being the largest component of GDP, it explains close to around 60% of the GDP. My idea is we should find a way how to increase the consumption expenditure.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned consumption here, because we understand, and any economist you speak to, and I speak to a lot of them, suggest that the reason why the government hasn't really been able to tackle the problems on their plate right now is because they want to drive growth, but they're not looking really at the reason why, which is lack of demand. Lack of private investment in private sector as well. Do you think the government has done enough?
We are having apparel industry, which is also happened to be one of our largest exporting sector. Now, if you look into the size of the apparel industry in India, it's close to $120 billion,
yes,
which is almost same to the size of the Reliance industry. Now, this apparel industry employs 40 million of workers, right? Now, the problem with, I was looking at one of the news item, which says that the problem with the apparel industry is they are not getting their GST input, which they have filed, you know, from the
problematic
government.
GST.
Yes, yes. And because of that, what happens is we are not getting competitive in the world market. And our apparel export shares is being eaten up by countries like Bangladesh, Vietnam, and so on and so forth.
Bangladesh is a success story.
It is a success story.
Around, yeah.
And that is a problem, because my idea is, if you look into this GST, had government was in a position to give back this input credit on GST, we could have been price competitive by as much as 7%, which is a big thing, you know. But unfortunately, I don't know, the government may not have that money because the economy is not doing, and corporate tax is a source of earning for the government. And because the corporate tax is also not getting there, again, we are talking yesterday, you know, for the first time, the imports started falling. You know, if you're looking into the items such as electronic items or steel, there is a clear indication that the import is falling because our industry is not doing well. or maybe because there is an excess capacity in our industry, you know. So the need of the hour is try to fix this problem, you know, somehow ensure that there is money in the hand of the rural people, because that is like 500 million of 1.25 billion population.
I want to talk about, you know, demand-driven answers really in just a bit. Now, I also want to go into the students as well.
Right.
But before I do that, I also quickly want to touch upon what we look at every year in the budget, which is, of course, whether the government is going to maintain the fiscal deficit targets, what is the CAD looking like as well, and what is the government's revenue target, all that. Do you think this time around the government perhaps, I think last year the target was about 3.3 or 3.4,
Right.
and the government did overshoot it. Do you think this time around it's going to be the same?
By
How much is that going to affect really as we go forward?
I wish they overshoot it for the simple reason you need to put some more money for schemes such as Narega, you know, because this is the bulk of where the rural people are working, and you need to give money in the hand of the rural people. You need to put more money in the PM Kisan, although they have now I think 75,000 crore they have allocated, but half of the money they could not disburse because the Aadhaar card of the farmers are not linked to their bank account, you know. And I also gave you that instance of the small and medium enterprises, they're not getting input credit tax. You know, so what this tells you, if industry is dying, at the end of the day, I'm not going to hire the people. And again, the latest data show that there are around 25 million people without job out of, again, 500 million odd labor force, you know.
Which gives me the perfect segue, because we have young students here, and after all, we want to talk about job creation. We also want to talk about the bane of our times, which is, of course, jobless growth in India. I want you to raise your hands if you want to speak about jobs, jobless growth, or any other such topics, unless you have a specific topic in mind, and I'll come to you. Who wants to speak on which topic right now? I'll come to you first. My friend, what is your name and what do you want to speak about?
I'm NilanjanBanik.
Yes.
I'm an engineering student. I wish to pursue research and higher studies ahead, but I feel there's a lack of support financially and otherwise. I wish and I want the government to provide us support and resources to go ahead and pursue this research and higher studies. I want to do an MBA from an IIM, but I'll have to spend 15 lakhs in just 2 years. And I would be grateful and glad if the government provides some kind of soft loan or an education loan, which actually helps me and supports me.
Who else wants to speak on a topic of their choice? My friend, what's your name and what do you want to speak about?
My name is Parikshit. I would like to speak about the concerns in the finished product businesses. So they are able to assemble these finished products at a very competitive rate compared to China. They're even doing it at a lower rate. But due to the high taxation on inputs, whether they get it from abroad or from India, and the very high minimum wage rates, they're not able to sustain their competitive advantage, which results in people not even getting these minimum wage rate jobs. So they just go unemployed. And this does not allow the businesses to be competitive both within India and abroad.
I think that's a fair point. I think we should applaud that point because such clarity is very rare. A round of applause for my friend over here. Well put. Very well put, very coherent, and I think Professor Banik would agree that my young friend over here hit the nail right on the head as far as MSMEs are concerned and their wage problems are concerned. Would you agree with them? And what can the government really do to address my young friend's point?
Two little points. One about the education that he was speaking about.
Yes.
In fact, I was discussing with them. You know, in the UK, you are having a degree from there.
Well, yeah.
Now, what you see over there, now they have started a program where people pursuing masters and PhD degree in artificial intelligence and robotics, the government is paying for the entire free. You know, so we also need to, the government need to handhold and facilitate this tie-up between universities, particularly the private.
Just on that point, how would you react? Because I've made the same point to policymakers as well in the past, and they say we've done enough hand-holding, we've done enough. Do you think the government has done enough hand-holding as far as these?
I don't see that happening, except for the fact now they are saying that few institute will be the place of eminence. You know, apart from that, when it comes to the number of patents being filed, the number of research paper being published, I don't see the outcome there as yet. So
that's a fair point. I also want to discuss taxes because I know these are primarily students, but very soon they'll have to deal with taxes. I think somebody wants to speak on tax, direct or indirect. Yes.
The government is going to revamp its direct tax structure in order to boost consumption expenditure. Also, over the years, there have been like a lot of reforms have been introduced in order to widen the tax base. But we see the dichotomy in the numbers is still prevalent.
Why do you think that is?
Because 7% of the Indians actually file their taxes, which roughly translate to about 6.2 crores of the Indians.
I think the figure is much lower than 7, my friend.
Out of which,
It's about 6%.
out of which only 2.04 actually end up paying
Absolutely
taxes,
correct.
which is like barely 1% of the
Absolutely
population.
good. This is a very well-informed audience, by the way. Another round of applause for Anand because he knows his facts. Not to interrupt you, but I had to do that. Go ahead.
Right. So I think the need of the hour is to how to incentivize tax payments, and the government can do this by. In the past, a lot of reforms such as like certificates of appreciations were handed out to people who effectively contributed to their taxes, like certificates like gold, silver and bronze were handed out. So the government should leverage these certificates. For example, I think the number of people who will be willing to pay their taxes will starkly increase if, for example, you could hold a wedding at Raj Bhavan through your gold certificate, or you will get access
Very
to
innovative
international
idea.
airports, lounges
I'm
through
not
your...
sure if Nirmala Sitharaman actually would go for it, but I also want to ask you, before I go back to Professor Banik and the others here as well, what about the fact, I'm sure you read papers and there's a lot said in the media about quote-unquote tax terrorism. Do you think a far more benevolent or a lenient sort of tax approach could actually mean that more people start paying taxes, you get your revenues and you meet your targets? Do you think that's the right approach, or do you think a stricter approach always works well?
Exactly. That's exactly what the point that I was trying to make, that even though like majority of the people that are contributing to the coffers of the government are the high net individuals, right? And these are the people who are very, very hesitant in contributing or paying their taxes. So if you actually incentivize the whole tax payment system, I think the amount of people just generally would go up.
Staying on tax right now, how many of you think, by show of hands, that there could be some tweaking of tax slabs in this budget? Your personal opinion, hands up, who think there might be some tweaking. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The majority of people think there might be something up on the tax tweaking front. We, of course, will not second guess the finance minister. Who else wants to speak on their chosen subject? I believe there are other people here on that. Yes, I'll come to you very quickly. What is your name, young lady, and what do you want to speak on?
Hi, I'm Priyal. I'm from BBA third year. I myself want to set up a business, but I see that setting up a business in India is very much difficult than setting up a business in other countries, because in India it includes so much of red tapeism, lots of paperwork and legal frameworks. But looking at the past data, there is a removal of 25% of angel tax, which is the welcome move of the government. And also, if we see, there has been more investments in startups rather than in...
Do you think the government has done enough for startups? Because they did, as you mentioned, remove the angel tax, I think the last year's budget, or I think the year before. But do you think that's enough? We spoke about hand-holding startups.
No, it's not enough. It's just the first move. First move. They need to take more initiatives, and I would like to suggest. I would like the government to suggest more such initiatives for the startups.
All right, Priyal, thank you. We'll go back to Professor Banik, and I'll try and come back, of course, to the audience as and when we can. Professor Banik, a very well-informed group of young students you have here. So do you think it's a piecemeal approach rather than a, let's say,
yes, I think it's a learning by doing kind of thing, what the government is doing. But my, and there has been also, it is coming out in the paper, that people are actually taking benefit out of it, you know, just filing some forged document as invoice, input invoice, you know. So government is actually losing out on two fronts, because if you are making something which is very complicated, A, I don't participate, and B, there are also chances that I not only participate, but I also make sure that I get some benefit.
You look for loopholes.
Loopholes, yeah.
The great Indian jugaad trick, if you call it.
And we are good at jugaad.
We are very good at jugaad.
Yeah, so my only suggestion would be, I hope to see maybe in this budget, there are some talk as to how to simplify this process, you know. In spite of the fact government trying hard to minimize the risk, because less than 35% of our land is irrigated, you know, and there is high volatility in the agricultural sector output as well. In spite of this, less than 25% of the farmers knew that
There is a product related.
there are
So
products
you're
related
saying
to
the
crop and-
outreach has, let's say, for want of a better word, really failed. The outreach for not just the policies and the programs, but also it hasn't really permeated into the demographic that India really wants it to permeate.
Yeah, means you have to go and reach out to the farmers saying that, look, boss, these are the kind of product which are available, and forget about the derivatives or the e-market. Most of them don't know how to take advantage of that. Recently, I was talking to my student. You see that every year, particularly during the election year, you see that the onion price shoot up in the sky. But can government does enough of incentive to set up e-market so that the farmers in Maharashtra can sell directly to their potential target, Now, just to give you some numbers, there are around 6,600 agricultural market, which come under APMC Act, which means as a farmer, I can go and sell my produce. Out of that, in whole of India, there are around 600 e-market. So you can understand that how small are the e-market. And even in e-market, there are problems, Let's say that within basmati rice, there can be 100 varieties of basmati rice. Someone will be selling for 100 rupees per kilo. Some basmati rice, you will also get it for 50 rupees per kilo. Now, if I were to, let's say, do trade through e-market, I just post some pictures, But there is no mechanism. For instance, you showing me some pictures and you are actually selling something else to me, the same basmati rice. But there is no mechanism to address this dispute.
Professor Banik, I want your opinion and your views and thoughts on what many captains of Indian industry, India Inc. as we call them, have come out and said. I think Rajiv Bajaj was the latest to echo this view, that the budget has never really been the problem or the vehicle to address India's systemic economic problems. How much do you agree with that and why? If you do.
Yeah, I totally agree with that because budget is a single day event where the idea is you kind of allocate resources to various activities, be it infrastructure, be it building more hospitals, roads, schools, things like that. But reform is a continuous process, Like when last time FM Nirmala Sitharaman reduced the corporate tax, it was not on the day of the budget, I remember. Even when she was speaking, like angel tax was removed, it was not on the day of the budget. So the reform is basically changing the existing rules and laws so as to make it more business friendly. So I totally agree with Mr. Bajaj when he says that the reform will continue to go. And my hunch is, given what has happened so far, and this is the first year that the government is on trying to do something more proactively, it will be a bold budget in that way. Where
Well, it's about time.
Yeah, it's about
It's
time.
about
Otherwise,
time.
we've lost the opportunity. That $5 trillion economy or things like we're talking.
I mean, we talk about big bang reforms,
Yes.
and we've seen the past three budgets, nothing big bang about them clearly. There's some incremental sort of piecemeal kind of approach, of course, not to be too critical of the government, but perhaps this is the time, it's now or never. I have a young friend here. What's your name and what is your view on rising petrol, diesel and petroleum prices overall?
So my name is Kanika Mittal and we generally travel a lot, right? So when I see petrol prices touching heights, petrol and diesel prices, the taxes we are paying for petrol and diesel prices are nearly double the retail prices. In Delhi itself, we see that the petrol price are 80.87, which is out of which half of it is taxes.
Yes.
So I request, I just want to ask government that can they make changes in the taxes? Can they reduce the taxes? That will, however, at the end impact us.
My name is Zeel. I'm first year engineering student and I want to speak about clean energy. I want the government to give more importance to clean energy. Since petrol prices are soaring high, India needs to invest on something which is sustainable, which is good for environment. Many of the developed countries already have considerable number of electrical vehicles on road, in which India is lagging behind. I think there have been reforms about this, there have been funds that are researching on this, but there isn't a welcoming nature for companies which are electrically in nature for India. There have been some talks with Tesla, but there is no breakthrough yet. India is lagging behind because, see, there have been exemptions in Western countries for the electrical vehicles. There have been less exemptions for companies that wants to open their business in India. And also, there haven't been electrical charging stations. Just like petrol pumps, there needs to be electrical charging stations.
So you're saying infrastructural problems?
Yeah, infrastructure problems. There needs to be some subsidies, some incentives for people who need to open electrical charging stations, just as Ministry of Agriculture is doing for farmers who wants to grow cash crops. They are giving incentives to them. I think government needs to give this to electrical charging station owners too, so that they open that, and then we welcome more of the companies.
So you'd like to see more on clean energy and of course addressing climate change in this particular budget?
Yeah, in this particular budget, because there haven't been much
Alright.
from the past years.
Oh, fair enough. Zeel makes a very good point. I think deserves a round of applause because climate change is upon us. You only have to see what's happening in Australia and you'll get a reality check really about how serious a problem climate change is. My friend, what's your name and what do you want to speak on?
I'm Ansh Bhatia, and I will like to talk about the job and the education system we are facing. In India, there are like 500 million working force, and out of which I guess 25 million are unemployed. And as we talk, only 2% of people are, those who are applying for the jobs are getting actual jobs. So this is because of the advancement in the technology that we are facing in this era. So I think Indian education system doesn't provide that particular skill set which is required by today's companies to get those jobs.
What I want is, since this country also has around 55 million people who are under the poverty line, and in case they are sick or they have a disease, so they have to pay hefty amounts in order to get any sort of medical facilities for them.
So you want increased focus on healthcare, primary, secondary and tertiary?
Yeah, primary, especially insurances to be provided to the people under the poverty line and incentives for premiums for them.
All right, try and quickly wrap it up by asking Professor Banik to wrap this up for us. Wish list, Professor Banik, as far as this budget is concerned.
You have to prioritize.
Yes.
Now, in terms of priority, the first thing which comes to my mind, the government should find out a way how to increase the consumption expenditure, because that is the most important and the critical.
That's priority number one for you.
That priority number one for me. Second is how to ensure that there is no market imperfection in terms of whether make the tax much more simplified so that the SME can file those taxes, or for that matter, how to reduce the logistic cost, or for that matter, what my friend was saying, that if I want to open up a business, do I find an easier way to open up a business? Mind you, that right now we have 25 million people without any employment opportunity, So the need of the hour is, why not give more emphasis to, let's say, gig economy, You have like Uber, Ola of the world, which are actually growing quite fast, Now, in fact, 56% of the new jobs which are getting created are coming from the gig side, So why don't the government, if they're running short of fund, try to somehow work with these private companies, the new age companies, and try to create more employment opportunity.
Okay, one last question because I'm completely out of time on this. Do you
sure.
believe this is going to be the budget, hand on your heart, as a citizen, as an economist who studies the news, who watches the news and watches developments around him, do you think this is going to be that big bang budget that we've been waiting for the past, let's say, 6 years now? Do you think this is the one, or do you think we'll be disappointed again?
I am hopeful, let's put it in this way.
Okay, all right. On that note, Professor Banik, I must thank you first of all, and these wonderful students who've been absolutely magnificent and well-researched and well-read. Give yourselves one more round of applause and a big round of applause to Bennett University as well. That was our budget special, a pre-budget special, if you will. This is what Young India wants. This is what the Economist, of course, to my left, has given us in terms of research, in terms of facts. I hope you liked the show. My name is Athar Khan. Thanks for watching.